A vegan lifestyle helps us to stay connected to the natural world. It can also, through a nutritious, plant-based diet, improve our health and longevity. Dr. Michael Greger, a celebrated physician, international speaker, and New York Times best-selling author, is dedicating his life to educating the world on the health benefits of a plant-based diet. He runs the popular website nutritionfacts.org, a non-profit, science-based public service site providing free daily updates on the latest nutrition research. So in most of the literature that you write, you always talk about the American diet and how it's, killing people. And really, I'm worried that the same thing is happening here in Gibraltar, right? So we've got 10% of our population has got diabetes, and there's an association or a support group for every modern disease, prostate, breast cancer, strokes, mental illnesses. We've got, the range. So how can we begin to heal our community?
Well, the good news is that we have tremendous power over our health, destiny, and longevity. The vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a plant-based diet and other healthy lifestyle behaviors. For many of the leading killers around the world, these are lifestyle diseases. And so unless you treat the cause, you have no hope of stopping or reversing them. I mean, doctors can slow down the rate at which diabetics go blind and lose their kidney function and go on dialysis and lose their lower limbs. But people get worse than they die. Same thing with heart disease, same thing with, high blood pressure, same thing. These are diseases that are caused by our diet and lifestyle. And until we address the underlying cause, we really have no hope. But the good news is that we can stop, arrest, even reverse some of these leading killer diseases by simply changing our lifestyle. In fact, it can happen so quickly and so prominently that doctors and patients alike underestimate the power of lifestyle changes, such that if you are on blood pressure lowering medications or on blood sugar lowering medications, you really must work with your doctor to rapidly wean yourself off these drugs, because you start eating a healthy diet, you'll find yourself rapidly over medicated. As your body heals itself because you're providing it with the right fuel, your doctor will need to de-prescribe medications.
Yeah, the thing is, when you go to the doctor, you've only, it's always a very short visit. It's like, what's wrong? Oh, okay. Well, there's no talk of nutrition or sending you to a nutritionist. It's always, well, look, take these and see what happens, But I was lucky that I had a doctor who said, go plant-based, and that changed my life too.
Doctors often don't discuss the alternatives. They just put people, on a blood pressure medication, cholesterol lowering medication. They said, look, the benefits outweigh the risk. They say, wait a second. What if I get all benefit, no risk by eating healthier, drop my cholesterol, and has the side effects are all positive? Also drops your blood sugars, also drops your blood pressure, also has these other beneficial effects. And so that's a critical missing piece often, particularly in primary care.
So can you tell us a little bit more about dairy? Can you explain to us what the problem with dairy is?
Well, there's no problem with dairy if you're a baby cow. If you're a calf, it's the perfect food. For anyone to drink milk after weaning is kind of strange. And then to drink milk of another species, it doesn't make any sense. And unfortunately, dairy consumption increases one's risk of Parkinson's disease, associated with increased risk of prostate cancer, the major cause of allergies and lactose intolerance. We really should get our healthier sources of all the things that are in dairy. So there's healthier sources of calcium, like dark green leafy vegetables. There's healthier sources of vitamin D and protein without the baggage of the saturated butterfat and cholesterol and the hormones and all that.
I wanted you to explain to us about the genetically modified foods. I can't, I'm finding it hard to get information on how bad it is for us and exactly what it is.
GMO foods, genetically modified organisms, are changing the genetic structure of plants or animals for certain desired traits. Now, we've been doing this for millennia using selective breeding techniques. I mean, that's how we turned a wolf into a poodle. We genetically modified them by selectively breeding for the characteristics they wanted, but the current transgenesis is using our knowledge of genetics to tweak certain genes to get whatever kind of desired result. In terms of the risks and benefits, the pros and cons, it depends on what you're genetically modifying for. So if you're genetically modifying, rice to add beta carotene, and you're giving it to a population with vitamin A deficiency, great. I mean, what's the problem with that? The problem is that companies like Monsanto, who are these companies that sell pesticides or herbicides, are genetically modifying their own seeds. So they sell the seeds and the pesticides, genetically modifying their own seeds to resist their own herbicide. So normally you have to wait between crops to spray on an herbicide, right, to kill off all the weeds. Right, you can't spray it on your crops because your crops will die because they're plants too, right? So if we genetically modify our seeds to resist our herbicide, then you can spray on the crops. And then the crops still stand and kills off all the weeds. And so you get better production. And the problem with that is that then you end up with higher pesticide residues in the actual plant. So then the question of safety becomes, well, how bad is this herbicide known as glyphosate for human health? And that remains an unanswered research question. We just don't know. So it's not the genetic constructs themselves, the genes that we're introducing, that we're concerned about from a human health standpoint. It's the effects, it's the desired effects. In the case of genetically modifying plants to resist herbicides, we end up with higher levels of herbicides, and then we really need to make sure that that's not causing any public health downside.
So, Doctor, I've just finished reading your How to Survive a Pandemic book. Great read. I learned so much. Now, I didn't realise that you also had a background in infectious diseases. So you told us more than 10 years ago that there would probably be a pandemic which would come from animals. Yeah? In your book you say, we now live at a time when we need to make urgent and ambitious changes. What are those changes, Dr. Greger?
Recently, over the last few decades, we have an unprecedented emergence of new emerging infectious diseases. They emerged from where? Mostly from animals. The AIDS virus is blamed for the butchering of primates and the bushmeat trade in Africa. Mad cow disease was because we turned, natural herbivores like cows and sheep into carnivores and cannibals. SARS and COVID-19 been traced back to the wild animal trade. But our last pandemic, swine flu in 2009, wasn't caused by wasn't from some backwater wet market in Asia, but was largely made in the USA on these pig operations in the United States. Now, thankfully, swine flu only killed about 500,000 people, but the next time we might not be so lucky in terms of what we can do. Well, as devastating as COVID-19 has been, an even greater infectious disease threat may be waiting in the wings of chickens. According to the US CDC, the leading candidate for the next pandemic after COVID-19 is a bird flu virus by the name of H7N9, which is 100 times deadlier than COVID-19. And the last time a bird flu virus jumped species and directly caused a pandemic, triggered the worst plague in human history, the 1918 pandemic, killed 50 million people. When we overcrowd, tens of thousands of animals in these cramped, filthy football field-sized sheds, lie, beak to beak or snout to snout atop their own waste, it's just a breeding ground for disease. There's, the sheer number of animals, the overcrowding, the stress crippling their immune systems, the ammonia from the decomposing waste burning their lungs, the lack of fresh air. What you really have is kind of a perfect storm environment for the emergence and spread of these so-called super strains of influenza. The bottom line is, it's not worth risking the lives of millions of people for the sake of cheaper chicken.
Who's going to stop this?
We're going to stop this. That's
yes, we're going to stop it. Some people say to me, one person can't change anything, because I go on and on about it. I said, well, if everybody does their bit, we can.
That's a great attitude. And that's how everything in the world historically has always been done. People getting together and changing the world. And if it wasn't so life and death important, with literally millions of lives hanging in the balance, okay. But because there's such this critical need, then it's no longer going to be kind of business as usual.
Thank you so much, Dr. Greger. It was an absolute pleasure. And if you ever come to Gibraltar, let me know. I'll take you up to the top of the rock.
I would love it. Stay safe and keep up the wonderful work.